welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are getting into a really wild scenario. Imagine spending $100 million on a single car, only to be told that you aren't actually allowed to drive it on a normal street. Like, ever.
I mean, that sounds like a punishment, honestly.
Right. But today, we're exploring a scenario where that is a very real and very expensive reality. We're unpacking a massive automotive experiment. The source material for this is a transcript from this wildly ambitious video originally produced by MrBeast, where they test, race, sail, and even fly an absurd lineup of vehicles worth over $250 million combined.
It's an insane amount of money for a test.
Totally insane. And our mission today is to explore the anatomy of extreme value. Like, what exactly changes as the price of a vehicle scales from a literal $1 bill up to an astronomical $100 million? So, okay, let's unpack this.
And it is a fascinating scale to look at, really, because when you see how money behaves at these extremes, the psychology of the price tag completely detaches from the object itself.
Exactly. I was thinking about it kind of like real estate. Think about the last time you were, just browsing housing listings online for fun.
Yeah.
You look at a $100,000 house, and it provides basic shelter, walls, a roof, a place to put your bed.
Basics, yeah.
Right. But then you filter for a $100 million estate, and you realize something quickly. It isn't just offering more shelter. It's an entirely different concept of living. You aren't paying for a roof anymore. You're paying for a private peninsula or a staff of 20 or this piece of architectural history. And we really need to look at these cars through that exact same lens.
That is the perfect framework. And, if you look out at your own driveway right now, or even just look at the smartphone in your hand, ask yourself, what tier of value did you actually pay for? Are you paying for pure utility? Are you paying for an experience? Or are you paying to hold on to a piece of history?
Yeah, that's the question. So let's start at the absolute bottom of the market to establish our baseline. The $1 car. The source describes it as a complete rust bucket. When they try to drive it, the cabin just fills with the smell of burning oil and old smoke.
Just a miserable experience.
Oh, completely. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. It's only functioning because someone pumped $20,000 into immediate repairs behind the scenes.
Right, which totally shatters the illusion of the $1 price tag right out of the gate. I mean, that 20 grand represents the absolute floor of mechanical viability.
You literally can't cheat the system.
You really can't. To achieve raw utility, just moving a human body from point A to point B at highway speeds without the machine disintegrating, it requires a baseline investment in physics. You need a functioning powertrain, intact suspension, brakes that actually catch. You just cannot cheat the basic costs of thermodynamics and friction.
So true. So if 20 grand buys you basic survival on the road, where does the money go when we jump up to the entry-level luxury tier? The source introduces a $100,000 Tesla, and the leap in value here is, well, it's entirely about automation.
The self-driving stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sure, there's plenty of space to fit all the kids, but the real selling point is the self-driving capability. The driver's just sitting there, hands off the wheel, feet off the pedals, while the car merges and switches lanes on its own at 70 miles per hour, and it kind of jerks you backwards with its speed, too.
What's fascinating here is we see the peak of utility, but more importantly, it's a massive psychological shift. At $100,000, you are paying a premium to, surrender control.
To take a nap, basically.
Basically. You are buying the mental space to relinquish the burden of the commute. The engineering required to make a human being trust a machine with their life at highway speeds is staggering. It requires redundant radar, optical cameras processing thousands of frames a second, all these predictive algorithms. You are essentially buying an advanced robotics platform that just happens to have seats.
Which makes total sense. But then we look at the next step up, the $200,000 car. It's a Lamborghini. And I notice a hilarious contradiction here.
Oh, the practicality issue.
Yes. You pay $100 grand for a Tesla that does the work for you, but you pay double that $200,000 for a car with zero practicality. It has half the interior space. The driver in the video complains he has to fold himself in half just to fit inside.
Because it's practically sitting on the pavement.
Exactly. And the engine sounds incredibly angry. They are flying down the road with barely a touch of the gas. And hilariously, someone actually left the keys locked inside it at one point. But seriously, I have to push back on this concept of luxury. Is luxury inherently impractical? You pay less to relax and double to be cramped and terrified while wrestling the steering wheel yourself.
It's a great question, and it highlights a complete divergence in what the buyer is actually purchasing. I mean, the Tesla solves a problem.
Yeah.
But the Lamborghini, at 200 grand, you aren't buying transport anymore. You're buying visceral feedback.
The feeling.
Right. The loud engine, the stiff suspension, those aren't flaws. They are features designed to make you feel every single mile per hour.
So they're literally just paying for adrenaline.
Exactly. But, is it really just about the experience? Or at that price point, are they just paying for the badge and the hood to show off? It's really a mix of both. It's experiential value combined with social signaling. The source jokingly notes it might be a way to compensate for something. But essentially, utility has been entirely replaced by emotion.
Emotion and pure speed. But once a buyer has maximized speed with a Lambo, what's left to buy? The answer, weirdly enough, is invincibility. Moving into our next tier, from $300,000 up to $2 million, we start seeing vehicles that break the rules of what a car is even supposed to do. You stop paying for speed and you start paying to defy nature.
Yeah, this is the transition from cars that simply drive well to multimodal transports and heavy-duty survival tools.
Oh, 100%. Let's look at the $300,000 military-grade safe car. The thing is built like a rolling bunker. It features thick, bulletproof glass and an explosive-proof frame. It even has a literal button on the dashboard that deploys this thick, awful-smelling smokescreen to blind anyone following you.
Which is straight out of James Bond.
It really is. And they actually test the armor. First, they blow up a normal car, and it's a complete disaster. The sunroof gets blown clean off, and the test mannequins are violently ejected from the seats.
Because a standard vehicle offers zero ballistic mitigation. The concussive wave alone turns the cabin into a localized vacuum.
Right, it just destroys it. But then they put an explosive charge next to this $300,000 safe car. And to raise the stakes, they put some Feastables chocolate inside. Which, I have to say, is just an absurdly funny way to test military-grade armor. Will it survive a bomb blast? Let's check the candy bar.
It is ridiculous, but honestly, it gives a highly visual indicator of the internal shockwave. If the chocolate snaps, the people inside would have a very bad day.
Totally. And it works. The safe car takes the bomb blast, the whole thing jumps a bit, and it comes away with just a minor dent in the window. The mannequins are completely fine, and the chocolate is perfectly intact. But if surviving a war zone isn't your priority, the source moves to a $500,000 boat car.
The amphibious one.
Yeah. On land, it looks completely normal. But you drive it directly down a boat ramp into the ocean, press a button, wait for a little beep, and suddenly you are driving on the water. They're out there doing donuts, churning up this massive whirlpool in the ocean, and they even race a normal boat and completely leave it in the dust.
Which is a profound engineering feat, really. Blending the aerodynamics of a road vehicle with the buoyancy needed for water is notoriously difficult. I mean, a car is designed to create downforce pushing into the ground for grip.
Right, to stick to the road.
Exactly. But a boat is designed to displace water and ride on top of it. So to make this work, the engineers had to design a completely sealed chassis and a power takeoff system. When the driver presses that button, the transmission mechanically disconnects power from the wheels and reroutes it to a marine jet drive in the rear.
That is just wild. And if the ocean isn't enough, for $600,000, you can buy a flying car. It is completely street legal. It has turn signals and license plates, but it has actual wings and a propeller. The source describes watching it climb to 8,000 feet in the sky. So there's just a regular-looking commuter car a mile and a half above their heads.
It breaks your brain a little bit to look at it.
It does. But the absolute peak of this tier is the $2 million hydrogen prototype.
Now, this is a major leap in automotive science.
It really is. It has never even been driven on a public road before this test. It maxes out at 221 miles per hour, has a 1,000-mile range, and its exhaust is pure drinkable water. The guys in the video actually hold a cup up to the exhaust pipe and drink it.
Wait, they actually drank the exhaust water?
They did. They just drank it right there. It's wild to watch.
That is wild, but scientifically, it's completely sound. This car uses a proton exchange membrane fuel cell. So instead of burning fuel with a spark plug, it takes pressurized hydrogen gas and forces it through a membrane. On the other side of that membrane is oxygen from the outside air.
Okay, so they mix.
Right. When the hydrogen and oxygen molecules bind together to form H2O, that chemical reaction releases a flow of electrons. Those electrons power the electric motors, and the only byproduct left over is just pure water.
So it's essentially a mobile chemical plant. And the source beautifully parallels this with another piece of bleeding-edge tech they feature during the drive, the folding Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 5.
Oh, the phone with the flexible OLED screen.
Exactly. They talk about how the phone fits better in your pocket and it runs 2 apps at once, and they're recording in 4K at 60 frames per second while it's literally folded shut. But the real connection here isn't the marketing specs, it's the mechanics of it. Both the hydrogen car and that folding phone are taking a traditional, accepted form factor, like a heavy combustion car or a rigid slab of a smartphone, and completely shattering the boundaries of how it operates.
Right, because traditional phone screens use rigid glass substrates. If you bend them, they shatter. But to make a screen fold without snapping, engineers had to develop ultra-thin plastic polymers combined with organic, light-emitting diodes that produce their own light. It basically allows the actual matrix of the screen to bend like paper.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. I have to ask, why would someone spend $600,000 on a car that flies or a boat car rather than just buying a really nice separate boat or a separate airplane? Is this just the ultimate human obsession with the all-in-one gadget?
I mean, it's much more than the novelty of an all-in-one gadget. At this specific pricing tier, that $500,000 to $2 million range buyers are essentially funding proof-of-concept research and development.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, when you buy a prototype hydrogen car that exhales water or an early-stage flying vehicle, you aren't just paying for the raw materials. You are paying for the decades of failed experiments, the blown engines, and the shattered prototypes that led up to it. This price bracket isn't about the vehicle itself. It's about buying into the future of engineering. You are paying a massive premium for the privilege of being the test subject for tomorrow's reality.
So you're underwriting the scientific breakthrough. I love that. But, eventually, technological innovation hits a ceiling. There are only so many ways you can reinvent the wheel, or in this case, make the wheel fly. And that brings us to the hyper-elite tier, from $10 million to $100 million. Once you surpass what technology can do, you enter the realm of the truly irreplaceable. Value shifts entirely from what the car is capable of to what the car is.
This is the critical transition from engineering marvels to historical artifacts. The physical capabilities of the machine begin to matter far less than its provenance.
Let's start with a $10 million Koenigsegg Vader. It is the only one in existence. The paint contains actual crushed diamonds mixed into the clear coat, and the entire frame is made of air core carbon fiber,
which is incredibly complex to manufacture. Instead of solid layers of carbon fiber, they use hollow carbon tubes. It maintains the structural rigidity of steel, but drops the weight drastically.
Exactly, which is why it weighs almost 500 pounds less than a Lambo. The insurance companies are so strict that only the owner is actually allowed to drive it. And the driver describes it as riding a roller coaster because the engine is so overwhelmingly powerful.
And just to clarify, for those who might not spend their weekends under a hood, it's a twin turbo. That means it uses 2 separate turbines powered by the exhaust gases to force compressed air back into the engine.
So more air equals more power.
Exactly. More air means a bigger explosion in the cylinder, which means terrifying amounts of horsepower.
Terrifying is definitely the right word. But then we look at the $20 million McLaren F1 owned by Leno. This is where the shift to history really begins. He bought it back in 1998 for $800,000. It is incredibly light, about 2,300 pounds compared to modern cars that push 4,000. And the design is what's truly wild. It is a unique 3-seat layout where the driver sits dead center like you're piloting a fighter jet.
Yeah, the center driving position is iconic for the F1 because it perfectly aligns the driver's weight with the car's center of gravity. But notice what Leno highlights about the car in the transcript. He mentions that people told him he would never get his money back on that initial $800,000 purchase.
Right. And now it's worth $20 million. It essentially made him $1 million a year just by sitting in his garage.
It's a pure investment at that point.
Exactly. But the source goes even further into the realm of the untouchable with these next 2 museum cars, worth a combined $80 million. First, a $50 million Jaguar. This wasn't just any classic car. It was the legendary actor Steve McQueen's daily driver. He got so many speeding tickets in it that his license was completely suspended.
Which is a great bit of history.
It is, but the driver testing it notes that when you're in a $50 million car, you suddenly notice every single pebble and pothole on the street.
The sheer anxiety of driving a financial asset.
Oh, it's palpable. Even just reading the transcript. They had a massive police escort surrounding them just to keep other drivers at a safe distance. Then there's the $30 million Ferrari. This was specifically constructed as a gift from the founder of Ferrari to the founder of Ford. It is the only version of this exact Ferrari ever made in human history. And hilariously, while pushing it on the road, the car actually stalls out. They had to hop out and push it before they broke the engine.
Which perfectly illustrates the mechanical fragility of these historical assets. I mean, they were brilliant for their time, but they require constant, meticulous maintenance to even turn over today.
Totally. And that fragility reaches its absolute peak with the final vehicle. The $100 million car. The world's first Ferrari. It is so valuable, so deeply historic, that almost no one on the planet is allowed to touch it. A specialized museum representative is the only person on Earth legally insured to drive it. They're only allowed to drive it over one specific bridge.
Just one bridge.
Just one. And to make that happen, the local police force completely closed the public roads. They brought in industrial street cleaners to scrub the asphalt and fill in every tiny divot just to ensure a stray rock didn't kick up and damage this $100 million piece of metal. But I have to push back here. At $100 million, it's not even a car anymore, is it? It's a massive liability. If you need a police escort, closed roads, and a specialized street sweeper just to roll it over a bridge without destroying it, using it as a vehicle is like using a Picasso painting as a placemat.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you're absolutely right. It has entirely lost its purpose as transportation, but it has gained a new purpose as a cultural anchor. Look at the evolution we've just tracked. Leno's McLaren shows value as an appreciating financial asset, turning $800,000 into $20 million.
Right.
But by the time you reach the $50 million or $100 million mark, you are no longer buying a vehicle. You are preserving an artifact. The value is driven purely by extreme scarcity and provenance. You are buying the ghost of Steve McQueen or the handshake between the founders of Ferrari and Ford. You are buying the genesis of an entire global brand. It belongs in the same category as a Renaissance sculpture, not a commuter sedan.
So what does this all mean? We started with a mission to explore the anatomy of extreme value, where we've essentially mapped out a hierarchy of human desires. From $1 to $100,000, your money buys utility. At $200,000, your money buys a thrill, an emotional experience. From $500,000 to $2 million, your money buys scientific breakthroughs. You are purchasing a piece of the future. But once you hit the tens of millions, functionality entirely disappears. You are simply buying history and legacy.
And this framework applies to almost everything we consume. The next time you make a major purchase, whether it's your phone or your car, pause and evaluate the mechanics of the price tag. Which tier of value are you paying for in your own life?
It genuinely changes how you view the economy around you. And I want to leave you with one final, beautifully absurd paradox to mull over. Consider this. The $100 million museum car is far too precious and too legally restricted to be driven normally on a street. The $1 car is far too broken to be driven without massive repairs.
That's true.
So if you need to get to work on a random Tuesday morning, the absolute cheapest car in the world and the absolute most expensive car in the world offer you the exact same amount of practical transportation, zero. It perfectly highlights that monetary value, when pushed to its absolute extremes, is an entirely human invention.